Hello, everyone. I'm Kristian Roberts of Taking the Stage with Kristian and Quo. I am waiting on my fabulous friend and co-host to join us. Thank you all for tuning in. We are going live again this week. Hello, welcome, welcome. Up there's Quo. Come on in the room. There she is.
Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, Kristian. How are you?
Peachy, how are you?
I am blessed. I am here. I am
Highly,
grateful.
highly favored, right?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Very appreciative. Hopefully, we'll have the opportunity to participate in some really, really good conversation for today. We're all about conversation, but in the things that we're wanting to do for today's episode, as it is Women's Month. Oh, y'all can't see my hands. Making sure that we're uplifting women and uplifting all of those individuals who have kind of brought us here, who continue to keep us here and have us and allow us to move forward. So I'm gonna stop talking. Go for it, Kristian, as we hold.
Yeah, as we
For
hold the
everyone.
house, as we do the opera singer hold the house uh, for 5 minutes thing that we do. But we thank you for tuning in, of course. We hope we can say something that is beneficial, and if anything, will be funny. Um,
Would be funny. If anything, we'll be real. I'll give you that.
Now that's true. Okay, that is true. Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us. Come on in the room.
Come on in the room. Ah, come on in the room.
You know the famous vegan vlogger Tabitha Brown.
Mm.
She sings that on her cooking episodes.
Oh, does she?
She
Okay.
does.
That's awesome.
She
That is
does. It's
awesome.
great. No, she's hilarious.
That's awesome. Hello, everyone. For those who are joining us, this is our live episode of Taking the Stage with Kristian and Quo. For today's episode, we're wanting to have a conversation with everyone and then to allow this also, as always, to be a resource, to be a tool, to be an opportunity for us to build on the conversations that we are having, and then to inspire more conversation. So we know a lot of those who watch, to which we are extremely grateful, eternally grateful, that a lot of conversations spark from the things that are discussed here. So please feel free to put your questions, your comments, all those things into the chat. And then more than anything else, please feel free to take these conversations with you. Please feel free and feel emboldened and empowered to begin those conversations yourself in other spaces.
Yes, indeed. That's the whole point. I always say we have to, in order to make change, we have to lay the groundwork, and the groundwork starts with talking to each other.
Mm.
You have to do it. Being uncomfortable, being comfortable being uncomfortable, if that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Haley sticking. Hi, Haley.
I dig it. All right. Well, Kristian, if you want to kick us off in our official manner.
Yes, in our official manner. So, hello, everyone. I am Kristian Roberts. I am here with my fabulous colleague and co-host,
Quodicia Johnson.
and we are back with another live episode of Taking the Stage with Kristian
And Quo. As we start each and every episode, as well as we start each and every gathering, we would like to do a land and people acknowledgement. And we do this because it is important in truth telling. It is important in the way that we heal the harm that has been done. It is important in the way that we take accountability for the things that we have not created, but that we have inherited. And it is important in the ways in which we own our ability, our honor, our responsibility, our privilege to be able to heal these things and move forward together. So I do take this time right now, right here in this place, to acknowledge that we in Dallas are on stolen land. We are on the land of the Caddo, of the Wichita, and of the Comanche sovereign nations. Nations that cultivated this land for 12,000 plus years before anyone ever came over. Nations that created stories, that lived, that fought, that continue to thrive, to do what was necessary in order for them to live. Nations that faced horrible conditions, that faced genocide, that faced policy that allowed for the forced removal by any means necessary. We also want to take this time to acknowledge that we are on stolen land built by stolen labor. People were stolen from their homes and forced here and then forced into labor. And from that free and that forced labor, we have what we now enjoy as Dallas. As a descendant of those individuals, I take this time to uplift everyone who has paved the way forcefully and with their own strength to allow us to be able to join together in this. I acknowledge and uplift these communities because they are part of who we are. They are part of the things that we experience, both good and bad, and they are part of the stories that will continue to happen and take place going forward. Of course, Dallas is not alone in this. The entire nation benefits from stolen land and stolen labor. So we ask that you continue to join us in these land and people acknowledgements as the minimum of what is necessary for us to do this work and to do it in a way that is meaningful and in a way that is sustainable and in a way that centers truth and connection. And so with that, I thank you for joining me for this land and people acknowledgement.
And of course, we thank you for joining us on this live episode and for being with us each week. Couldn't do it without you. Special thank you to the Dallas Opera staff, in particular our friend and brother David Lomeli.
Hey, David.
Congratulations on your new position, my friend. I always want to give a shout out for that. So today we are going to talk about women's history. This is History Month. It has been designated as such. And we want to, talk about the importance of it. Of course, why it is necessary, why we do it, and sort of how we, go about this in the arts world as well, as it relates to the arts world. And our, for me this month, I will admit, when this month comes around, I'm like Women's Month, International Women's Day, all of those things. And, it's always it's always, of course, because we come off of Black History Month, and as I said last episode, I'm Black every day. Well, I'm a woman every day too. Now, that being said, we know that there are contributions and things in history and stuff where, stories did not get told. We are uncovering things every single day. So in doing that, I don't know, Quo, I just want to sort of get your thoughts as well. That's sort of how I approach this month in the same manner that I do, in a similar manner that I do Black History Month. It's a part of who I am.
Same. And I believe, if nothing else, it speaks to the very need for us to begin to tell narratives in their entire form, right? In their entirety. The fact that we have to go through the process of creating specific dates, specific sections of the year, specific times, specific months that we designate time to suddenly focus on things speaks to the fact that those things have been left out. And so in this, I believe it's like this beautiful doubling, if you will, of celebration and uplifting that can inspire us to do so just beyond of course, the months that we're in, but just beyond the months that have been presented, right? Yes. And what that means in the ways that we can uplift different individuals throughout all of our communities. And then different individuals in different spaces in the ways that they connect to the things that we're doing. So for me, Women's History Month and International Women's Day has always been a beautiful thing, but also acknowledging that even in celebration, right? Just like all the other celebrations, even in celebration, we are not exempt from the systems that divide us and from the systems that place a hierarchy on who is important, who should be celebrated, how we celebrate. Who gets to determine when celebration happens and when we uplift others. So for me, as I was growing up, as I'm still growing up, right? Women's History Month has always been like, okay, cool, because you only focus on these women. But I believe that just as we have the power to own the narrative, just as we have the ability and the connection to expand the narrative, Women's History Month can be used to do the same. We all have women in our lives, right? We want to acknowledge the beautiful ways in which, one, we got here, and two, the ways in which our families, whatever they look like, right? The ways in which our communities, the ways in which this work gets done, not just through women or men alone or non-binary, but just how we all come together in the ways that we understand that we need to uplift each other, and we need to do so in truth, and we need to do so in connection. So for me, this month is an opportunity to expand, to expand and to deepen simultaneously.
Well, and it goes to the question of, and something we addressed last week concerning Black History Month. People say, why do we need it?
Mm.
Well, the very same argument that is made for the need for it is because there has been a bulk of history where women have been left out.
Mm-hmm.
And those stories are just coming to light. And then there have been certain groups of women who've been left out of that history.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to acknowledge that. So I think that, part of this, in Quo, you say all the time, centering truth and connection. And that's part of the work. And extending this beyond one month, and to acknowledge this, all year. And the fact of the matter is this: how do we all get here? So we talk about the women in our lives. We talk about women who had influences on us, growing up and then into the arts, throughout our lives, doing many facets of our lives, many areas in our lives. And so that's something we sort of wanted to talk about today, and sort of ask everybody else, how do you approach this month? How do you celebrate it? Did you know this month existed? Did you know there was an International Women's Day? There are all these types of questions, and I say that because, again, I think about the similarities. If I may give a tiny brief history, because Google is a very real thing, so you can go find it. But with Women's History Month, I think the first Women's History Day, there was a day first, that was in 1909, and then in 1978 it became Women's History Week. And then in 1987, I believe there was legislation introduced for it to become Women's History Month. So that's sort of the timeline. So it was not actually established it was established after I was born as a month, But the point is that just like, Black History Month, there was a progression to even get this acknowledged. And of course, now we know that it's acknowledged on a national and even an international level. So that's good. That's progress. The hope is that it becomes so normal that to uplift everybody in any space at any time, that maybe one day we'll see where we don't need it. But until then, just like Black History Month, we know that it is needed because there have been stories that have not been told. One only need look at a lot of the monuments that we see every single day, in our cities. So just for that alone, we need to think about that. The things that we see in our history books, and things that we learn in our history books, they've been mostly male focused, So there was a need for this, so people could say, and so we could all look and say, wait a minute, we were there too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my take on it, and that's kind of how I look at it. And so, yeah, the celebration of it, the truth-telling portion of it, the connecting part of it, to make it a normal, everyday part of the school curriculum, part of wherever you are, part of the narrative, the overall narrative, a narrative that serves the whole of us and not just a certain sect of us. So I think it's very important that we acknowledge this. So that's my spiel on my soapbox for a second.
And in this, I'd like to take the time, because I've been in a lot of healing spaces lately, and just to uplift everyone. You are worthy to be celebrated, right? You're worthy of celebration. And it's not something, just as you're worthy of healing, it's not something that has to be earned. And the ways that we celebrate and show appreciation for everyone in our lives and everyone in our communities, those who have the intent, right, and who are intentional about celebrating community and about creating spaces with and for and of others, it calls for celebration. So as we said, we have Black History Month, and then we have Women's History Month, we have International Women's Day, Indigenous Peoples Day, we have Hispanic Heritage Month, we have all these beautiful things. Still, we don't have an Asian American month. I'm going to put that out there for anybody who wants to get started on that. And make that happen. And
Yeah.
so, as we're looking at all these beautiful communities and these beautiful ways that, yes, our differences provide us with an opportunity to find our people, but those differences also allow us the opportunity to connect and to expand our worlds. Celebration looks like showing appreciation for me, right? Growing up in school when I did have lunch. The lunch lady. Celebration looked like appreciating and honoring, of course, my parents, of course, my mother, of course, my grandmother, my great grandmother, who I was blessed to know. Just it looks different ways. It's the young girl at school. It is the teacher. It is the doctor. It's the composer. It's the performer. It's the administrator. There's so many
The
roles.
conductor.
The conductor. There's so many roles and so many opportunities. The firefighter, right? So many opportunities for us to be able to truly celebrate. So we want to use this month as an opportunity to kind of hone in and again to expand, right? This is us deepening
Yeah.
so that we can expand, so that that celebration takes place throughout the entire year, but also throughout our lives, and what that means for us to uplift and celebrate those who make a difference in our lives, and those who make a difference in the way we live and how we live and how we get access to resources so that we can live our best lives. So I wanted to place that out into
Yeah.
the space and uplift people in that.
Yeah. It's, we talk a lot about celebrating the whole person,
Mhm.
and that is very much what for me, what this is about. And because my dad always said that the hand that rocks the cradle rules the nation.
Uh-huh. Well,
Oh, no.
that can be interpreted different ways.
I know, but my point is that we always said that, but he was thinking in terms of who has the children, who was raising them, and this sort of thing, and who the baby first knows, when they come out in a typical situation. It's not
Mhm.
always the case, but and so I think about that, and I think about some of those powerful figures in history. There was a movie called Hidden Figures, where they talked about,
Yes,
the role of three black women in NASA.
right.
It was called Hidden Figures for a reason, because they were hidden.
They were hidden.
We didn't read about them in our history books. I think about that, and I think about the ways in which we talk about the women's suffrage movement
Yeah,
movement and how yes, women of all colors were marching, but the black women had to march at the back,
right.
and yet they
Right.
still marched. And
Right.
here's the thing: Ida B. Wells, as tough a fighter as she was, she marched to the front of the line and
Yeah.
said, "No, I'm marching at front with the state's legislators."
Right.
So we have to talk about those stories, because there's always a deeper root, and in order to get to the center of that truth, we have to acknowledge that there are nuances
Hmm.
to all of this as well, and that some people are still not being celebrated as others are,
Right.
or held up as others are, when they were there and had just as much a hand in these types of movements as anybody else. So I say that, and that's not to cast stone. That's just to say we're going for the whole truth,
The
and we're
whole
going
thing.
let's be real about it. And if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming from on this as well. I also want to acknowledge that in a month like this, that we have to remember that there were still people who had some of their stories left out. But what I love about where we are right now, and what has come about in the pandemic, particularly in our field, in the arts where we are right now, is this rising of conversation around this.
Hmm.
Uh, the work of telling, of looking at different narratives, and of storytelling, of us as storytellers,
Yeah.
and looking at different narratives, having a diverse, not only diversity in color, but diversity of mind, thought, background, all of these different things. Well, automatically you're going to have women in the room to do that, you know.
Right.
I have to give a shout out to the Dallas Opera for the Heart Institute of Women Conductors. We know that that is making a difference, you know, to put more women on the podium. And that's not us tapping ourselves on the back because it's our company. We would do that for
Yes.
anybody.
Yeah. Yeah,
We'll do that for
TDO
anybody.
knows we don't do that.
No, we don't. But that's the point, is that that's how you make a difference. And so, you know, sometimes I'll get questions, you know, as to, it's particularly when I'm talking to young women, I'm mentoring young women, and they'll say they've never seen themselves on a podium.
Hmm.
They've never seen themselves as being a general director and CEO of an opera company. But all of a sudden, we start. You still got me, Quo?
I got you.
Okay, just making sure. I had a live Amber Alert. Apparently, it got through my do not disturb. So, and it's Amber Alert, so it's important.
Amber Alerts,
Um,
I had to say.
so that's the thing that I wanna talk about in this particular episode, and as far as how we interact with each other, and how we go through our day-to-day lives with each other, and try to really and truly see each other. And like I said, as opera creators, you know, as
Mhm.
opera administrators, as singers, as artists, our job, we are in the business of storytelling. And so when we talk about telling narratives that have not been able to been heard before, when we talk about questioning the narratives that you've been told, and diving a little deeper, saying, "Wait a minute, what was the reason behind what I've been told? Did
Right.
anything else happen?" I
Mhm.
think if anything, in a time such as this, that is more important now than it ever has been, because people will fact check you real quick.
Well, not even that. Well, yes, people will fact check. And then the beautiful thing is the humility that comes in. Hey, this is how this happened, or you're missing this part, and being able again to expand and say, oh, okay, well, let's add that in, right? As we mentioned before, there are so many things that we do not know. And so many of us have been taught that this is all there is. So check mark, you know it. Congratulations, you passed. Yeah. And so
Yes,
we're finding ourselves in a situation that is almost overwhelming, the amount of things that we do not know. But I encourage us all to have that growth mindset, to go for it, to jump in, to learn and absorb and find out as much as you can, knowing that you will never know it all, right? We understand that he who thinks he knows does not. So it's just this whole beautiful opportunity for us to truly learn more, and then to truly have conversations about what it means to celebrate and what it means to begin to tell stories in a way that considers everyone involved and affected by the story. So we have a lot
yes,
of times we have stories coming from particular perspectives, but the beautiful opportunity to present a story from the person who lives it, from the
yes,
person and their experiences, as well as this beautiful opportunity from not just those who observe, but for those who take those stories and move them forward in the ways in which we inherit those things. So I want to give opportunity for all of our viewers, for those who are joining us, to give us some of the ways in which you celebrate the women in your lives, the ways that you celebrate Women's History Month, and then the ways in which you are considering kind of breaking down those barriers. And one, who is a woman, right? What is woman? But the barriers more so than anything in what women can do, who women can become, how women can serve, how women can lead, how women can follow, and then the ways in which we can support each other in that, because that's also a beautiful part of the conversation. So feel free to put your things into the chat. We'll continue to converse, Kristian and myself, but know that you're a part of this conversation as well.
yeah. And if you have questions, drop those in there as well. Uh, like I said, you know, we're open to answering questions. That's why we're here. And some of the things we wanted to talk about and discuss. So, Quo, so my question for you is, you know, last week we talked about, one of our heroes pretty deeply. You know, we talked about Denise Graves, but can we talk about, your women influences in your life, and that's in the arts, outside the arts, who in your life has been influential in sort of shaping, You know, who you become, who you're aspiring to be, all of those things.
So before we get to that, I see Stephanie Tolevari. Hi, Stephanie. Hey, Steph. Has put something in the chat about celebrating rest for women.
Yes.
Yes, 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 and celebrating rest in a way that it does not need to be earned. That is
Yes. Or
something,
justified.
or justified. And
Yes.
that as we live and as we breathe for everyone, rest is so necessary. Rest is sacred in that space, in the ways in which we are allowed to, again, expand and to deepen, to ground ourselves, to restore ourselves, and then to be allowed to be human,
Yes.
very much be allowed to fight the expectations of how we're supposed to show up in spaces. And there are nuances to that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Different women can show up in spaces different ways. We know about what it means to be able to use your tears in certain spaces and then be ignored in other spaces. We know what it means and how you're expected to dress, how you're expected to behave, how you're expected to engage with others, how you're expected to support, and how you're expected to take on certain roles. But also understanding that as we combat these norms, as we combat these culture norms, that do not serve any of us, regardless of our gender, regardless of our sex, regardless of our pronouns, right? Regardless of how we look at these things, they don't serve any of us. So
No.
yes, Stephanie, yes, yes, yes for rest. Yes, for celebrating rest and doing so holistically, right?
Yes.
So thank you for placing that into the
I
chat.
love the fact that she says so they may feel regal and
Mhm.
celebrated as they rest. And that's
Yes.
a very real thing. We need to start telling people that it's okay to take a nap. And you know what? Good for you. You know what I mean? Like, because a lot of times we live in a society where the rush, you know, the hustle, you know, if you're not on your hustle, you know, if the team no sleep, I don't believe in that team. I need to go to bed.
I need to go.
Um, I told you I was going to be funny today.
Yeah, I
Um,
need to go to bed. But also rest and regal and a very natural need again for our bodies to
yes,
rest. And then in the very natural need in the ways that we connect, in the ways that we sustain life for those of us who can, who choose not to, we're still sustaining life in so many different ways in the ways that we give to one another. And we should be celebrated. Everyone should be celebrated. Everyone should have the opportunity to feel celebrated, and everyone should have the opportunity to
yes,
truly own for themselves their rest, to truly own for themselves their narratives, their stories, their presence in the ways that we go about doing what we call life, right?
yeah.
So, yes, all of that snaps on it.
Yeah,
Um,
no, that's good snaps. Haley just said she teaches an empowerment slash inner beauty workshop for young ladies and women. It is inspiring to see the girls and women change before my eyes. Absolutely, 100%. It's one of the reasons why I like to mentor young people, not just women, but young people. Period. It's one of the reasons why because they have to see that for themselves, you know, in a society that has beauty standards that don't take into account every other folks. Yes, absolutely. We have to talk to them about their inner beauty. And so I think that is very important. So kudos to you for that. And I know she does that work. She's also a great yoga instructor and dancer and everything else. But so I can definitely see her doing that. So definitely 100%. We do live in a society where beauty standards, and I mean, just look at the commercial for beauty products. Look how much money that industry makes, you know, and so you're painting up the outside, but what's going on in the inside? So yes, Haley, absolutely. And it's important that that happens from a young age. So 100%.
and I think as we speak about uplifting, I think it's also important that we speak about the environments and the spaces that we create as
Yes,
well. And in the ways that as we learn who we are, as we start to understand our own identities, knowing that those things will be shaped and formed throughout our lives, that we create environments, that we demand and that we command environments that allow us to truly get to the core, right? Whatever you
Yes.
do put on, don't put on. I don't wear makeup, but for those who do, rock it, right? But for us to be able to understand that the things that make you who you are the things that are at your core. And for us to
Mhm.
have environments that uplift, y'all keep hearing me say uplift because that's you're gonna be tired of hearing me say uplift.
But
But
it's
those are the
true.
environments that allow us to uplift and to support one another, and then to be able in our differences and in our different choices and in the things that we've inherited differently and the ways that we go about doing this work together. So absolutely. I don't see any new I see girl, yes.
I know. No, it's
um,
but it's true because and I think about that a lot because I think about we talked about body positivity and just the ways in which different bodies are protected, as opposed to others, and different types of bodies are uplifted and others aren't. And it's like if you have a body, it should be celebrated. Like that's how you were put here. Now, what you want to do and to improve or whatever you feel like you need to do, that's your business. And kudos to you. Rock that. But I think we live in a society that places too much pressure, and our young women and our young girls feel that pressure. And so we have to make sure that we are creating spaces and environments and modeling behavior that we want to put out into the world because they're watching us. Young people are watching us. Young women are watching you. And if you think kids are not watching,
they are
say a dirty
watching.
word in front of them and then see if they repeat it.
But
So
then the ways that that becomes collective accountability. And so
yes,
that it is not on this young person to make sure that they're not following improper or detrimental or
yes,
harmful examples, but also on the ways, get this, on the ways in which we as a community start to exemplify what it means to embrace those who may be providing what we consider improper or detrimental examples, and how we start to fold that into community
yes,
healing as well. Because so often circumstances, especially for young people, all the time, not even so often, most of the time, it's out of their control. So the ways in which we have to react and respond to the environments that we're given, especially as young individuals, as young people, that is not determined by ourselves. This is a natural response to what is happening.
yes.
So all that to say, if we're going to look at the effect, right, we're going to look at the symptoms, we need to get to the root cause
Let's
of
look
it.
at the cause.
We need to
Yes,
talk about accountability, and we need to talk about who determines what and who gets to say what, who gets to decide how things should be done. Knowing that as we're in a patriarchal society, right,
yes,
that is built in within white supremacy, knowing that just not beauty standards, right, because so often we talk about women and beauty and where that comes from and who is meant to be attractive to the eye in what ways and all these things, but the ways in which we go about owning spaces where we're in there together and owning spaces where we know we have the opportunity to follow, to uplift, to lead just as well as anybody else, right?
yes,
And the fact that it has been done, it is being done, it's been done for a long time. It is the erasure of those narratives, it's the
yes,
erasure of those individuals that is problematic, because then it becomes this thing where people don't realize it. They look up and yeah, all the composers are a white male. Not to knock white male composers, but all the composers, it's not possible.
yes.
All the
How can this
inventors,
be?
it's not possible. Like
Yeah,
it's not possible. It's not logical. And so the ways that we have, again, just the excitement and the opportunity to, I'm going to say it again, uplift, but to deepen and to widen, to expand this narrative in the beautiful ways that opera has opportunity for storytelling. Yes, we have lead roles, and yes, there are expectations for lead roles. Lead roles within opera and within art making look different to different communities, look
yes,
different to nuanced lived experiences, look different to the art making process. Lead role also looks like conductor. Lead role looks like director. Lead role looks like choreographer. Lead role looks like all of these things in which spaces should not place people off limits.
yes.
That's where we're getting to. So that's my soapbox.
No, it was a good soapbox. You saw me snapping because it's very real and it's something that is needed. I look at the world right now, you know, and I look at the fact that we have made a lot of progress. I will say that there's been a lot of progress made. There are women in positions that, you know, there's still a lot of firsts. Even in 2021, there's still a lot of first woman this, first Black woman this, but in particular, first Native American this. You know, there's all, you know, woman, all this kind of stuff. You know, and that's all over. Literally, those kinds of things are happening all over the world. But the difference is now is we see them now, as opposed to being deliberately left out. You know, now we can hop on the internet and we can find information on things. People are starting to do some digging and are starting to ask questions and are saying, wait a minute, I never learned about this. And it's not just, like I said, like we said last week in last week's episode about Black History Month. It's not just happening with Black history. It's happening with all kinds of history.
Yes,
Women's history, indigenous tribal nations, American Indian. People are asking questions, you know, and people are saying, wait a minute, this can't be all there is to it.
Yeah.
And I will admit, sitting in my music history classes, sitting in my music theory classes, all of those classes when I was reading, and everybody on here that's a musician, you had this book, those Norton anthologies.
Yes.
History of Western Music. Yeah, you know, but I know I can't be the only one who was flipping through and like, so we just gonna mention that Nan Earl toured with her brother, you know, toured with Mozart for a little while and then had to stop because she was a woman and was expected to get married, and leave that nonsense alone. Oh, we're just gonna read about Fanny Mendelssohn, okay? Oh, Clara and Robert Schumann. We're just gonna read about them.
Like
but everybody else. Where's everybody else? Where's everybody else? Because from what I understand, there was a lot more to it. And, you know, shout out to Mary Dibburn for doing some digging on that. She's doing a women's festival, Women Composer Festival, you know, right now. And so, you know, folks like that who are digging and finding this music, the same way in which we are digging up Black history, the same way we are digging up and finding all of this stuff about, you know, our tribal nations, our First Nations who were here before any of us. All of these things are happening, you know. And the beautiful part about that is that it is the telling of the world when you do that. When you start doing that, you are telling of the world. Now, I speak specifically for the U.S. because that's where I'm from. But if you think about the amount of gifts and talent and skill within our races, I hate to even bring that up, within our genders, within our sexes, with our orientations, all of these beautiful things that make us who we are, right? If you think about it, none of that has been used to its full potential yet. And can you imagine what would happen if we brought all of that diversity of thought, of background, of cultural experiences, of life experience, of talent and skill? Can you imagine what we in this particular country could come up with all of this stuff from different backgrounds, all these people from all over the world? Instead of looking at that like a bad thing, and I won't get into politics on that because it's not political, this is a human issue. Why don't we embrace that for the beauty that it is? It's going to take work. It's going to take some people moving aside, you know. It's the reason why something like the Heart Institute was created. You know?
And even in those beautiful ways, right? I say it all the time, and I've said it multiple times on this show. In the ways that opera is the plural of work, right? Opera is the plural of opus. Opus is a work. So it's multiple works in the ways that we can bring together multiple identities, multiple roles, multiple stories, multiple gifts. I can imagine it, right? But only within my imagination, how beautiful it would be. And the fact that opera has the opportunity to do it. Art and culture have the opportunity to do it.
We're so equipped. And we're so equipped to do it because we're in the business of storytelling. The thing is that we have got to get out of those traditional methods of doing things and those business practices that do not serve us and start looking wider.
And even beyond the business practices, it's also, like you said, it's not a political thing. This is human. This is societal. The ways in which we start to consider how other people are living their lives. It's very
Yes.
easy to ignore what other people are going through when we're in a bubble, right? We have our own things that we have to deal with. But when we no longer define the world simply through how we experience it, but how we experience it with others. Just as when you were a child, you start to realize, oh, the world didn't start when I was born. There was stuff that happened before me. Other people are doing things. I remember like having this epiphany, like, oh,
Yeah.
when I was very, very small, like, oh, okay, mom was here. Mom was here before me, right? And then learning
Well,
these
and then the world doesn't actually revolve around me, because you can't tell a toddler that.
Very much so. And so the ways that we start to, again, expand how we look at these things, it provides us with a very beautiful opportunity to truly, again, uplift, to truly celebrate, and then to truly start to heal the harm, but to also create the humility for us to correct and heal harm that will be caused. Because as we're trying to shift and as we navigate, as we change, as we grow, it's inevitable. You asked me earlier about the women that I uplift in my life. My mother, of course, right? Yeah, she's amazing. She's awesome. But also my sister, also, there are too many to name, right? Just like, just like in history, there are too many to name. I am grateful to my professors from Prairie View A&M University. I am grateful to Ann Williams, founder of Dallas Like Dance Theater, who is such a way paver and such a legend just in the dance realm and within African American dance and all these things and companies, and history maker here in Dallas, truly.
Yes.
I am grateful for the opportunity to see different women take on different roles so that we're not limited in the things that we believe we should be and the things we believe we can be, and then the things that we believe we are. And that is expanding beyond that binary thought of, oh, well, if you do this job and if you have this role, then this is how you are cast. This is who you are, and you don't step outside of those things. But to be able to experience so many amazing individuals who expand what it means to be a woman and what it means to live your life as a woman, what it means to navigate, to own space, to lose, to win, to strive, to thrive, to suffer, to conquer as a woman. I'm grateful. Again, too many names. We did talk about Denise Graves last week, but I also noticed so many individuals who speak about their first kind of experiences with opera. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are speaking about so many of the legendary women who have opened so many doors for others in opera, right? So we want to acknowledge that, we want to uplift that, and then we want to use that as a catalyst to ensure that it does not end there, that the barriers, those doors continue to break, that they continue to shift, they continue to shake, because as we celebrate history, of course, we're making history in our own way. And so that's my very long-winded answer to, I don't just have just a few, right? Marjorie Anderson Clive, we spoke about her.
I get it. Marjorie Anderson Clive was a big one for me. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here if it weren't for her. Virginia Dupuy, who made the first call.
Young, different people that we had on this show. It's just,
Oh, absolutely. Like, I think about that. And of course, my mother and my grandmother, who I just love to pieces, I think about that. I think about my grandmother on my father's side, who I never met, but I certainly inherited some of her genes, because my dad will look at me sometime and go, and I think about those influences, and I think about, like, my voice being this deep. My grandmother's was this deep on my dad's side. I would have never known that had my mother not, my mom told me that, that she said, no, you have a voice just like you have your voice. It sounds like your dad's mom's. And, I didn't know that. And I think about that. I think about the fact that my great-grandmother on my mother's side was in an interracial relationship way back in the day. My grandfather presented as white, Matter of fact, we think he was white. My great grandfather presented as white. If you saw a picture of him, you would look at him and say that's a white man, you know. And how bold that was for them to tell the system, we don't care, you know, we're going to get married, you know, and, you know, we're going to have a family, and everybody else, whatever you want to do, there's nothing you can do about it. You know, I think about that. I think about, you know, my sister, you know, she's 14 years older than I am, and she spoiled me rotten. You know, I think about that growing up. I think about like my piano teacher, who was my first piano teacher, who's no longer with us, rest her soul, Frances Hudson. People like that had an influence on my life. The first, Jeannie Williams was a voice teacher in the Waco area, but she was a guidance counselor at a school counselor at my elementary school. But in high school, she got wind that I had a good voice, and you know, we were putting on a talent show with believe it or not, a superintendent of our school was of our district was on stage playing guitar with us. But she's the one and came and worked with all the singers, you know, check mic balance and all this kind of stuff. And I think about that. I think about people like that. There are so many I cannot even name. I cannot even name. Professors at McLennan Community College, at Baylor University, at Southern Methodist University, at all the ones that I've been to, many of them have been women, you know, from every walk of life.
Right.
And so I cannot emphasize that enough. You know, I cannot say that enough. They've been there every time. And that's the reason why I'm so glad to see people starting to get their flowers now.
Yes, yes.
And while they're alive, to see them, you know, we're having to give a lot of people flowers right now, posthumously, because, you know, they weren't acknowledged while they were alive, you know. And so I'm glad now that we are finding ways, again, to uplift people and to remember those folks whose names were not necessarily written down anywhere, but whose voices are and work they did. We're standing on their shoulders right now, and it's coming out like fire right now. All the things as we seek to right wrongs and as we seek to center truth and connection. I'm very, very glad to see that now, and I'm very glad. I mean, even us sitting here on this show right now. You know, and you know, as much as people don't want to say it, it took somebody who appreciates women and what these two women had to offer, David Lomeli, to say, "Hey, come do this." You know, come and do this. So that's what I'm saying. I want people to understand that, you know, the narrative is changing, but it's up to us to make sure that the entirety of the narrative is changing. That gigantic narrative that's made up of so many smaller narratives, that those smaller narratives actually get in there. You know, that big giant picture that we're trying to create, we have to make sure that that everybody that has a paintbrush and a sketch pen, a sketch pencil or something like that, has a way to create on that canvas. And we're starting to see it more than we've seen it in our history, and I'm glad, rightfully so. It's about time. Past time.
Past time. Yeah. Yeah. But it's okay. As always, right? I guess these are, unless we have any lingering questions or comments.
Yes.
Again,
We're gonna wrap up.
For joining us for the conversation, for listening to the conversation. Oh man, Latino women in opera, right? Just Black women in opera.
Black women in opera. Yeah, no, for real.
Just this.
The newly formed Denise Graves Foundation.
Yeah,
I mean,
just this fierceness that comes with being able to command and own your own experience. There's power in that. And then being able to share in experiences with others. There's also power in that as well. There is power in being able to move aside and to witness, to experience the leadership and the celebration of others as well, right? We should not be centered. As an individual, as communities, your community and you as an individual should not be centered in every single thing. That's a form of supremacy. That does not make sense. It is okay to celebrate with others without being centered in the work that is being done. So that's also my reminder just to organizations, if you're watching this, similar to how we celebrate in Black History Month and how we celebrate Women's History Month, how we would celebrate other individuals going forward. It is not the time for us to center everybody else on the backs of whomever is to be celebrated, right?
Yes.
We recently had it's not an incident. We recently had what happened in which there was the Black History Month program, but the flyer only included all white people.
Yeah.
It's okay to not be in the center, right? So even as we're doing this now for Women's History Month, it is okay for you to actually focus on the purpose of the work that you're doing if you truly understand the purpose of the work that you're doing. And we're open for conversations, right? And how we start
Yes.
to define purpose and define mission in the work that we're doing. Completely open to that. It is okay to not be at the center. It is okay to uplift, to center those who are to be uplifted and centered at that time. Again,
Yes.
there is such power and there is such freedom. There is such an ability to deepen and expand when our roles shift so that we can hold space with and for others. When we make way, as I've said before, make way and then move out of the way. And then that's okay. So that's just my reminder for organizations since we're kicking off this month and we're in the first week of this month. Just do it properly.
Yes.
And intentionality and intent do not outweigh impact. So if you don't know, it's completely okay to go to someone who does, because
And
we
have them
need
help.
each other in this
Yes.
work. You're not meant to know by yourself, and you don't have to. It's not possible, and you should not have to, right? It's okay.
Yeah.
So as I'm going to transition, right?
Well,
into
I
our-
wanted to say one thing before, because I would be remiss in my duty. Right now, there is a group of women, a group of people, but led by women who are working to restore the National Negro Opera Company, founded by Mary Cardwell Dawson in Pittsburgh. And I know the Denise Gray Foundation is in on that. I know Black Women in Opera are in on that. I also know that BAO is in on that. BOA, sorry, Black Opera Alliance is in on that as well. So to restore the legacy of Mary Cardwell Dawson, who founded this opera house, I believe in 1941. And if I didn't get that corrected, please feel free to comment and correct me on that. But I would be remiss in saying that. But again, that was hidden history, you know, and it was founded by a woman, a Black woman, but it was founded by a woman in the opera world. So if you want to know what you can do to uplift, it's these kind of things, digging those things out and bringing them to the forefront. I think it's a great way to do it, you know, and it's to me, will be our experiences in opera and in the arts as organizations will just be richer for it.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the right thing to do. We will be richer for it, you know. But like anything else, we know it has growing pains. But I believe that you know, that refiner's fire that we talk about, sometimes it can be that in the beginning it can be very uncomfortable, learning things that you didn't know or anything like that. But the thing is, once you know them, now what do we do?
Right.
You know. So yeah, I just wanted to say that before we got off of here. I want to make sure I uplifted that because you know, that we stand on the shoulders of people who you know, worked really hard to establish things, you know, and I hate that they get hidden away in history. And so I'm very glad that these things are being brought into the light by this new generation of artists in particular. So kudos.
Yes. Well, if we do not have any additional comments or anything, I will provide kind of our positive notes. In this, you are worthy of celebration. Women are worthy of celebration. Women are worthy of all the roles that we can do. And we are worthy of the opportunity to expand what we can do.
Yes.
And then to redefine the barriers and to to eradicate the barriers that have been put in place. We have been here since the beginning, right? Like it's not possible not to, but also we are here. There are women in your lives who have made such a beautiful impact, whether you realize it or not. So you are worthy of celebration as a woman. You are worthy of giving space to celebrate women. So please celebrate the women in your lives in the different roles. We all play different roles, but please celebrate the women in your lives, not just those who are placed upon pillars, but those who also provide you with an opportunity to view this world in such a beautiful way. I encourage everyone that as we expand what it means to complete the narrative, know that you do not have to do it alone. It's going to be a lot of work, but that's kind of some of the beautiful things about it, the beautiful ways in which we free ourselves of that expertise we thought we had and that perfectionism that we held on to for security. No, the security is going to come in truth. Security is going to come in community. Security is going to come in celebration and uplifting. Security is going to come in rest, right? And restoring and being able to move forward. So celebrate the women in your lives. I celebrate the women in my life, including Kristian Roberts, right? And do so in truth, do so in a way that allows you to experience the beauty in sharing space with others. Because you can do it. I know you can. We can all do it. And those are my positive notes for this episode.
Well, thank you, Quo. And of course, as always, you know, I will always celebrate you and I always have your back. We've been doing this thing for a long time and very much appreciate you. That to me, I know that I should be able to say that goes without saying, but you know it, again, if we're going to be giving flowers, let's give our flowers now. So everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, if you have questions, you can always, message us privately. We have no issue with that. You can shoot us emails. We have no problem with that. Message the Dallas Opera. They'll get it to us. I promise. They always do. They're fabulous about that. Shout out to the TDO Network team. They always take good care of us. And folks, be bold, be creative, be celebratory. Get into uplifting each other. Get into looking at the deeper narrative. I promise you, we will be richer for it in everything that we do, particularly in our primary job in opera, and that is storytelling through singing. So with that, we will sign off, and we will see you next week. Peace.